Hello, it's Scott Manley here with Interstellar Quest episode 25, and we are about to go interplanetary with a crew of 3 Kerbals. This is the Duna Express, and it is going to express itself through the medium of dance. You see it wobbling and flexing its pieces there in an attempt to attract the female of the species. Okay, not really. No, what we're trying to do is turn this thing, and because it's so long and flexible, because those docking ports don't really provide a huge amount of rigidity, the whole thing flexes as we try to turn it. And it took the better part of 10 minutes to turn it around to point at that blue vector, the blue maneuver node, which is gonna mark roughly 45 degrees around the planet. Now, we're gonna burn 2 minutes either side of this periapse mark. And, when we exceed that, we're going to cut the engines and repeat until we actually get an escape vector. That way, even though we are only accelerating at 1 meter per second, we will still be able to exceed escape velocity for the planet Kerbal. It's just a matter of time and patience. Meanwhile, let us take a moment to watch the sun set on the limb of Kerbal as we depart, as we try to accelerate ourselves up to many times its escape velocity, actually not much more than the escape velocity. Now, I'm not trying to turn this spacecraft, and we can watch the shadow coming over it as well. Oh, how beautiful. Yeah, we're not going to try and actually turn this spacecraft because that would make it hard. That's actually hard. We're more or less going to hold it in the same position every time, and that will actually help control the natural tendency for the periapse to rise over time. If you just kind of burn inwards as you're going towards perigee and outwards as you're moving away from perigee, then you should be all right. There's one look at the planet Kerbal from 480 kilometers up. That's gained 380 kilometers on that first burn. And now, of course, we're coming around, and we're getting much closer to our second burn window. There we go. We're just, it says time to apoapse. Oh, here we go. Time to periapse. 6 minutes, 5 minutes, 4 minutes. Around 2 minutes is where I'm going to kick off those engines and start pulling us forwards into new realms. And yes, watch the sunset one more time because the sunset looks cool. Yes, I am such a predictable individual, haven't I? The sunset, very nice. Yes, let's watch it. Get rid of the maneuver node. Now, you may be wondering what's inside these. Let's take a quick look. Ooh, very cryptic. I probably should have kept that longer, but at 4 times normal speed, that would have meant a lot longer holding in there. Yeah, this thing, we're just going to use SAS to hold everything straight. Now, somebody asked why I built a pendulum rocket, especially after I essentially made a video explaining the pendulum rocket fallacy. Well, the thing about the pendulum rocket fallacy is that it applies to rigid bodies. Now, in this case, we don't really have a rigid body, right? So it doesn't matter. The point about the pendulum rocket fallacy is it doesn't matter where you put your engines, right? You're going to have the same stability regardless. Now, in this case, I'm flying something which is not totally rigid. Oh yeah, and we're ditching this thing here. This will be this tank we have emptied. We're going to leave it behind. But in fact, we're going to leave it in orbit because it has a transmitter on it, and it will be a kind of ghetto communication satellite. Anyway, yeah, since we have this whole thing and it's built of a series of docking ports which are not particularly resistant or not particularly strong to lateral forces, it's kind of like trying to move a chain, right? And if you push a chain, you can actually kind of push a chain along if you're careful, but the thing tends to kind of bunch up. That happens the same. If you try to push one of these things from the back, it will tend to bunch up and flex and actually become unstable, because as the thing starts to flex, the center of mass will deviate to the left or the right. And so the whole thing becomes unstable, and any deviations will begin to develop into larger and larger deviations, and you won't be able to fly it. Now, by putting the engines at the front and dragging it, if the thing flexes to the left or the right, then the center of mass will go to the left or the right, and the natural force of the engines will tend to restore the position. So it's all to do with being a rigid body versus a non-rigid body. And in this case, this is not rigid at all, and so we should treat it that way. Therefore, it's just like it's easier to move a chain by pulling it rather than pushing it, and that's what we're doing here. Granted, we are pushing this or pulling this very slowly. This is less than 1/10 of 1g, which it means to get escape velocity, incidentally, is going to be something like 20 minutes of continuous thrust when you account for the fact that the time dilation is kicked in and the timer is yellow, meaning we're running at a shorter clock tick than we should, or a longer clock tick. I like to put my precision slider all the way up so that it will slow down the game rather than skipping frames. I prefer to have it slow down and render every frame rather than skip a bunch of frames and look jerky. A lot of people ask why their version of Kerbal Space Program has lower frame rates. And okay, I do have a pretty beefy machine now, but it also helps that I take my physics slider and put it all the way over. Now, for this particular orbit, I had to actually choose not to go too far. So I didn't want to end up encountering the moon, so I purposely cut my engines early on this one so that we would fly up below the moon but not actually encounter it, because the moon will mess with my trajectory and require further corrections. And given how much effort it is to steer this thing, I'd prefer to just keep this thing pointed in the same direction. But of course, as we fly past the moon, we can get a good look at it. Look at that lifeless body orbiting Kerbin. What mysteries does it hold? Will we ever figure out what that transmission is all about? Well, given that we've had a few launch windows to deal with, I won't be surprised if the aviation team is planning on sending another mission based on the contents of Hangar 18. Or maybe they'll convince the rocket people to go. Who knows? All I know is that there is a lot of science left to get on the moon, and even more so now on Minmus. We should be able to get a couple of thousand science from Minmus with actually way more than a few thousand science. We should be able to get a lot, given that we have all these instrumentations. You know, just for reference, if you start out with tier 0 science, you can travel to Minmus and kind of use your EVA pack to reach a bunch of different locations and collect data. And I did a test and I managed to get over 2,000 science using level 0, tier 0 hardware. And that means the only science experiment you can perform is crew observation, sample collection, and EVA reports. And between those, over 2,000 was easy, and I think I missed quite a few because I only had a limited amount of fuel in the lander and couldn't get there. Anyway, look, this is our final escape burn. We hesitated so we didn't encounter the moon, but now with the moon out the way, we can spend all our time just burning fuel and lifting our apoaps. We're up to 30,000 kilometers, and at this point it is very sensitive, so even small changes in velocity will pull us up faster and faster. Now we're out past Minmus, but we are not stopping there, we're continuing. And yeah, you see it picks up very quickly and we escape into interplanetary space. Now we're going to bring this out. We're not going to stop burning. We want to get as much extra help from the Oberth effect by burning close to Kerbin. We want to do that now rather than waiting until we're interplanetary space. So I guess we're just continuing to burn. The whole thing will have about 3.5 kilometers per second of delta V, so that should be enough to aerobrake into orbit. There is a huge fear about aerobraking something this large, unwieldy, and, well, flexible. So, we'll have to make a decision on that. I'm not sure how well it'll work. I had actually considered splitting the spacecraft into 2 parts and aerobraking each one separately. The idea being that if it breaks due to the stresses on it from the atmosphere, it's better to consider it breaking where I pick, where I've control, in a regime when I can actually choose what will happen. Ah, yes, Sun Apoaps is moving out. We're getting very close to the Duna's orbit there. And soon, if we're lucky, we will actually get an encounter. Obviously, the times we've got for these launch windows are from Kerbal Alarm Clock, which I believe only uses a circular approximation. So when you go to an elliptical orbit, it's entirely possible that you don't actually get the encounter you thought you might. Their closest approach is decreasing. We must be getting pretty close. There we go. Burn a little more. More or less just keep firing at this. Separation is getting closer. 200,000 kilometers. 100,000 kilometers. Hey, and we got an encounter. We are on our way to Duna. We got an encounter first time. We will probably need a small trim operation to make sure that we're actually traveling close enough to the planet so that we can take advantage of their aerobraking. Anyway, as we depart, we get one last celestial present. A solar eclipse. As we head off to a place where the moon is way larger than the sun, so it'll be a nice memory of home. With the help of a Kerbal alarm clock, I have not forgotten my solar skimmer probe. It's going to go down less than 1 million kilometers from the sun and collect all sorts of fascinating scientific data. Beam it back to the planet Kerbin and I don't know, we'll hopefully be able to do something with it. Unfortunately, it's going to return a lot less data than I originally anticipated because, of course, the rules changed. Previously, I was going to, spam the science, but now I can't do that anymore. I have a 40% cap on the amount of science that can be returned, so unfortunately, we're only going to beam this back. It's not entirely... It is possible that I may be able to return this to Kerbin, although it will probably burn up during re-entry unless I come up with some fancy trick. Let's see what the magnetometer has to say. Go on, do your stuff, magnetometer. The readings are off the scale. Perhaps the heat is causing a malfunction. Perhaps indeed it is really hot down there, which is of course one of the scientific challenges of sending a probe to the sun. Log seismic data, that's a really bad idea, isn't it? Can't be done. Log gravity data, recorded accurate measure. Well, that's pretty dull, isn't it? Well, we got that data nevertheless. What else could we do? We're just beaming it out there. Come on, Communitron, beam that stuff. Thank you. Now log again. Oh, we still have 3.5 science more. Well, not one to look a gift horse in the mouth. Not one to ignore possible science. There's another 7.9 science from this. What else can we got going on? We have what? We have the antenna. Oh, there it is. There, that's this thermometer. Collected. Come on, who's doing this user-generated file? You should come up with some smart-ass comments there. Nice to know, nevertheless. Okay, log it. And there's no more science to get. Okay, so all that's left now to get is... Yeah, that one we've maxed out that. We've maxed out all that. Okay, so I guess we have no way around it. Oh yeah, log the magnetic data. No, yeah, there's nothing left. Yep, we now have to burn our one-use experiments, our single-use experiments. We have this exposure day, the SC9001 Science Junior. The high radiation environment caused a few of the samples to glow. It looks like it would be fun to paint the rocket with these. And the goo feels right at home here, in a region where the solar radiation is punishingly powerful. Also note, this is traveling at 42 kilometers per second, meaning that this has my Kerbal speed record. There is actually a plan to send a probe to the sun. It'll go within 8.8 solar radii. It will be going 200 kilometers per second if that ever happens. Anyway, so other thing that we have is we have the Moho lander is now coming up on its approach to Moho, obviously. It would be a bit silly to call it the Moho lander and have it go to Eve. No, it's coming in here, and we have to carefully figure out where we're going to burn. So What we do here is we've targeted Moho, right? And you see how it has a position vector on there, right? Now, the target mode doesn't actually give me any relative velocity, which is very frustrating. I think Squad should fix this, I guess, since I pointed it out 6 months ago. But yeah, all we're going to do is line up with that because we're pretty much approaching it, we know. Fire the engine that we have and hope that we don't actually miss the target. We would like this to fly into the planet Moho, but if it doesn't, then it will just disappear and fly around and hopefully it not hit anyone. It's almost running out of fuel, just firing this down. Look at that, we're accelerating at about 3G, and that's with quite an extensive piece of probe hardware sitting on top there. Okay, well, that's us. Ditch that. I hope that that is on a course to hit Moho, and moreover, I hope that if it does so, it will not be disrupted by everything else. Okay, so now the bottom stage is on course to hit Moho. Now I need to adjust my orbit so that I fly past it, because although we have this ion engine that's going to push us, which should give us something ridiculous like 13 kilometers per second of delta V, but it may not give it to us quickly enough. So yeah, they'll burn laterally, or we're not really burning. Ionize laterally. Go on, ionize, ionize, ionize. Yeah, okay, no, let's point it in the right direction. We will ionize once we point it the right direction. There we go. Come on. No, you're not wanting to turn. Okay. No, start burning. So we're burning basically backwards along our orbit, and the idea is that should mean that we come into orbit around the planet Moho. Moreover, we should pass behind the planet Moho, which is important because the planet Kerbal is lagging us, and we want to make sure that our position of Moho is on the side of the planet which is closest to Kerbal, because we have to be able to communicate, and we can't communicate through the planet. Look at that, there's the thing flying away. Whoa, off to meet its date with Moho and perhaps collect some science or something. I don't know, maybe it will be detectable from space, who knows. Anyway, we're heading in here and now accelerating at a tiny fraction of a G. And hopefully, as I said, we're burning backwards, or we're ionizing backwards, and that should bring our periaps outside the planet Moho. And then from there, we'll just burn away from it until we actually, assuming, basically trying to keep ourselves. There we go. That's us. We've got an encounter which misses Moho. We're not going to smash into it. I don't know how long it'll take for us to slow down. We could well fly past the planet, but that's better than flying into the planet completely. Okay, 100 kilometers out. Now I'll just be a little more careful. So anyway, that's our Moho thing. This is going to take a long time to slow down. I don't know what the relative velocity is, as I pointed out, because the target display does not work correctly, and I'm sure the developers will fix this at some point. Sooner rather than later. I tell you, if the developers fixed everything I thought needed fixed, they would not have a game. They would not have time to develop any new game. Let's let them work on it. Okay. So yeah, we spend a lot of time just slowing down, and it takes a long time. We pretty much point our vector over the retrograde vector, or the position vector of the planet Moho. Do 4 times time acceleration, and then on top of that, there's another 4 times time acceleration you're looking at here. It is going to be a long process, and you do not need to watch all of this. Ion engines were never meant to be. Ion engines are like the rocket science equivalent of watching paint dry. I mean, I'm assuming that the paint is awesome stuff. I mean, they're great, but they take a really long time to get anywhere. Of course, the practical limit with ion drives, really, is that you're accelerating the gas using electrical power, and you can only get so much electrical power from your solar cells. So That really kind of constrains how much thrust you can get out of these things. Obviously, chemical rockets get their energy from a chemical process, but ion drives, they get it from elsewhere. Anyway, I had a interesting encounter and I was forced to make a decision. You see me slowing down here, just more or less guesstimating where my velocity vector should be. And then I got an encounter with Eve. Now, this would be kind of desirable because it would be 22 days out, and the launch window, the departure window, is about 70 days. So we would cut a whole bunch of time off our encounter with Eve. However, to get this, we would have to make our encounter with Moho slightly different. This was an encounter that was 150 kilometers, so we wouldn't get science near Moho. So in the end, I just let the thing pass through. Finally, yes, this is that booster rocket we had discarded. Will it hit Moho? Well, let's find out. Obviously, just following this thing in, it's traveling, as you can see in the frame of Moho. The reference frame of Moho is traveling in at about 6 kilometers per second. So that gives us an idea of just how much delta V we're going to need, how much we're going to have to kill to actually get into orbit around Moho. And I'm not sure whether we will do it because in time. I know we have enough delta V, we just don't know how much acceleration it is and whether we'll fly past Moho and have to come back. Regardless, this thing isn't coming back, it's going down. I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe. Unless, of course, you're a spent booster rocket.